Chapter 81. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Holoset, what is this? Jesus, what did I see? Fuck, I actually saw an L-88 with my own eyes. When Locke drove the Corvette L-88 to the Mendez repair shop, he instantly attracted everyone's attention. Victor and Ryder threw the AR-15 in their hands directly on the table on the side, shouted around the car, holding their heads and making unbelievable expressions. And their crazy appearance was as if they saw Scarlett Johansson dancing naked. As the national supercar of the United States, the Corvette has an extraordinary status in the minds of Americans, and the L-88 is a stunning work that pushes the Corvette into another dimension. It is definitely a godlike existence in the car circle, not only because of the rare ownership rate of this car and the price that is not inferior to the top supercars, it is also because it has indeed achieved brilliant track results. It deserves to be praised like this. Sarah Mendez was holding a Glock G17 in her hand, wearing a white vest and denim hot pants. She looked cool and beautiful. Although her expression was not as exaggerated as Victor and Reed, her pretty face was also full of shock and excitement. Locke turned off the engine, pushed the door and got out of the car. He immediately saw that the place for shooting practice next to him was full of bullet shells, at least thousands of them. Obviously, the three of them had been practicing shooting diligently for the past 3 days. This tense atmosphere made Locke's heart sink and his guilt increased greatly. Well, let's get this thing done quickly. Victor Mendez came forward and asked nervously, can you lend it to me? No, Locke refused. He just wanted to get this thing done quickly to avoid distracting his attention. He would think of the Mendez brothers and sisters from time to time during these 3 days. If something happened to them, he would feel guilty for a while. Fortunately, nothing happened yet. Logically speaking, with his personality, he doesn't need to care too much about the life and death of the Mendez siblings, but who said that this matter was caused by him? His intervention last time caused the Mendez siblings to lose the amulet Mario Pierce, which put them in danger. Since this cause and effect has been involved, it must be resolved. Well, he got involved in this matter, definitely not because Sarah Mendez is too beautiful. Victor Mendez shrugged, not angry. Well, I don't want to either. I heard from Sarah that you want to talk to me. Locke nodded. Let's go, let's find a place to talk. Seeing Sarah Mendez looking at him shyly, he threw the key in his hand over. Sarah, please help me park the car. Victor Mendez curled his lips, looking unhappy, but didn't say anything. In the office on the second floor, Victor made a cup of coffee for Locke. I heard from Sarah that you like this stuff. After he handed the coffee to Locke, he went to the refrigerator to get a Corona and squeezed a lime into it. Victor sat opposite Locke with a big mouth. Go ahead, what do you want to talk about? At this time, Locke found that he seemed to have always underestimated Victor Mendez, thinking that this guy was not smart enough, was almost deceived into the repair shop, was impulsive, and was a die-hard sister control. But after his father's death, Victor Mendez was able to maintain the current situation, not be completely eaten up by the real estate developers, and was able to fight against the gangs. It is definitely not something that Mario Pierce can protect with just a word. He asked, has the Smith family made any moves these days? Victor paused for a moment while drinking beer, and looked at Locke in surprise. You actually know that Martin, the bastard, belongs to the Smith family? Yes, you are a cop, it is easy to get this information. His face sank, and he said ruthlessly, this bastard has been saying that he wants to cause trouble for us. As long as he dares to come, he will definitely not come back. Locke raised his eyebrows and asked, do you believe me? Victor was startled again, and nodded. Of course, with your identity, you shouldn't lie to us. Besides, you have that kind of relationship with Sarah after all. Well, I believe you. Locke was instantly confused. He and Sarah Mendez have that kind of relationship. How come he doesn't know? Fuck, we are innocent. Locke subconsciously wanted to explain, Sarah Mendez is not yet an adult, he doesn't want to be regarded as a pervert, but the words were swallowed again. Forget it, this matter is not the point, the most urgent task is to quickly resolve the threat of the Smith family. Locke said seriously, there is an old Chinese saying, you can be a thief for 1,000 days, but you can't be on guard against thieves for 1,000 days. Victor frowned, obviously not understanding. What do you mean? Locke had to explain in more common words, we can't keep doing this, passively waiting for the Smith family to come to you. Maybe they just want to keep putting pressure on you like this. Victor showed a look of realization, nodded and said, "This sentence makes sense, it is true, so, you mean we should take the initiative to kill this guy?" Locke shook his head and said, "No, we should force them to come as soon as possible." Then Locke told his plan: "I have already used my connections to find trouble with Cavill Construction Company. If there are really police officers in the West Canyon Police Department who are colluding with him, they should not be able to find out, but these are not enough." Locke took a sip of coffee, full of bitterness. "Damn, brother-in-law didn't put sugar." Victor looked impatient. "Just say what you want me to do. Why do you people always like to talk in circles?" Locke was speechless, put down the coffee, and said, "I will help you contact a lawyer, and you entrust the lawyer to sue the court. Since the lawyer you hired violated professional ethics and did not protect your interests, apply to the court to invalidate the contract." Ah, Victor was shocked. Is this really possible? Locke nodded and said, "This is not the point. My purpose is to alert the enemy. After receiving the news, Cavill Construction Company will definitely let the Smith family take action. I will help you set up monitoring equipment at the intersection later, so that once Martin brings people over, you can wait and solve this problem once and for all." Seeing that Victor seemed to be very concerned about the contract, he explained again, "Although there is no problem with your contract, the lawyer obviously violated professional ethics, and the other party's bankruptcy and illegal transfer of the contract to Cavill Construction Company are all loopholes. As long as these go through the judicial process, the law firm will help you solve them." Marion has given him professional advice. Marion's law firm mainly undertakes patent disputes and business breaches. It is very professional for such contract disputes. Victor asked again, "Can the land of the track really be taken back?" The land next to the track was cheated, which has always been Victor's biggest concern. Locke nodded and said, "It's not a big problem." Victor said excitedly, "I listen to you. I will do whatever you ask me to do." When leaving, Locke checked Sarah Mendez's shooting results again. It's true that he made a mistake last time. This woman is very talented in shooting with a pistol. The bullet is getting closer and closer to the target, but the hit rate of the rifle is average. Chapter 82. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the morning, in the locker room of the Wilshire Police Department, after Randy Casco changed his clothes, he did not leave, but told everyone about the scene of visiting Nathan in the hospital over the weekend. He looked jealous and said exaggeratedly, "Damn, you didn't see how happy this guy is. It's incredible that he can find true love while in the hospital. You don't know how well Martha took care of him. He has gained weight. Guys, we can make a bet. I bet this guy may say goodbye to LAPD after he is discharged from the hospital. Does anyone want to join? I bet he will continue to stay in LAPD, $10. Count me in, $5. I bet he will leave, $10. Randy stretched out his hand, walked in front of everyone, and took the money one by one. His movements were very smooth. He did this kind of thing many times. When passing by Locke, he said to Locke, who was tying his shoelaces, "Come on, bro, where's your money?" Locke looked up and said to David on his right, "David, I don't have change, I'll buy you a cup of coffee later." David took out another $10. "What are you betting?" Locke replied, "Same as you." Randy took the money from David, clapped his hands and shouted, "Guys, the answer will be revealed next week." Soon everyone dressed neatly and came to the duty room. Before starting patrol every day, Captain Jones would hold a regular meeting, mainly to summarize the work of the past week, which blocks to focus on, and what types of cases to pay attention to. After the morning meeting, Captain Jones announced the adjournment, but he kept Locke and David also stayed automatically. Captain Jones looked at Locke with a serious face and said, "Locke, you have been complained. 7 Adam 15. Start patrol. Copy." David stared at Locke curiously, and when he put down the hand radio, he couldn't help asking, "Why are you not affected at all?" Locke shrugged and replied calmly, "Didn't I know that he would complain about me?" Yes, Locke was complained by the white reporter in the case last Thursday. Captain Jones just came to him to understand the details of the complaint. David was speechless about Locke's indifferent attitude. "Well, you mentioned it last time, Chinese wisdom, right? But you have to know that too many complaints will affect your resume." Locke knew that David meant well, and nodded. I know, I will pay attention in the future. There is a Starbucks here, I'm going to buy coffee. Locke was about to pull over when the radio rang. ZZ, Koreatown, someone called the police and was robbed. 7 Adam 15, copy, that I don't know if it's because it's Monday. All kinds of things and accidents have to go to work. Locke and David were busy all morning, and various police reports came one after another. It wasn't until 11 o'clock that the two had time to stop for a cup of coffee. At the entrance of the Wilton Theater, Locke and David each held a glass of iced American coffee and leaned against the police car. The windows were lowered to facilitate the first hearing of the police. David asked, "How was your weekend?" Locke told about his family's weekend return to Lubeck, and casually asked, "What about you? Did you go fishing again?" David shook his head and said, "No, I took advantage of Catherine's absence and renovated the roof of my house this weekend." This is a big project. Locke was amazed. Sometimes he had to admire Americans. Because labor is too expensive, many American men are forced to become all-rounders and have super hands-on ability. Zizizi, number 55, Billiot Street, the cleaner called the police and found that a tenant had died of gunshot. Locke and David looked at each other and hurried back to the car. Locke picked up the walkie-talkie immediately. 7 Adam 15, copy, Billiot Street is only 2 blocks away from the Wilton Theater. Locke and his team arrived at the apartment building where the case was reported in less than 2 minutes and found that a police car had been parked downstairs. David glanced and said, "It's Mark and Teddy's patrol car." After the two went upstairs, they found that Mark and Teddy had set up a cordon for the scene and were guarding the door to protect the scene. Seeing Locke and David coming, Mark immediately said, "The case has been transferred to the Detective Bureau, and the people from the Detective Bureau are on the way." David complained, "When did the Detective Bureau become so idle?" Generally speaking, ordinary criminal cases will be handled by the detective team of the branch at the beginning, and they will be transferred to the Detective Bureau only when they are too difficult. Locke glanced sideways into the room and could only see the living room, not the body of the victim. The room was also very neat and clean. Mark asked with a smile, "Do you want to go in and take a look?" "The scene is not too bloody." Locke shook his head, "Forget it, I don't want to register my footprints." This was his first time at a murder scene since he joined the LAPD. Well, he had committed 3 murders himself. After a while, the detectives arrived, and with the forensics department behind them, there were more than a dozen people, a mighty and impressive force. After seeing that the person walking in front was Tom Williams, Locke was speechless. Was there no one else in the detective department? Tom Williams saw that he didn't even look at Locke, and walked straight into the apartment. Sophia, who followed him, smiled and nodded at Locke, and excitedly introduced to the people behind him, "This is Locke Lee from the Wilshire Police Department." The white detective behind Sophia immediately stopped, looked at Locke curiously, and stretched out his hand to him. "Dean Dyson, I've heard of you for a long time, and it's nice to meet you." Locke was a little speechless, stretched out his hand and shook him. "Nice to meet you, Detective Dean." A black man with a cold face behind Dean Dyson was very strong and looked like a force. He glanced at Locke coldly. "It's you who rejected Captain Tom. Apart from being a pretty boy, there's nothing special about you." Sophia shouted in dissatisfaction in front. "Jimmy." The black man snorted coldly and then walked into the apartment. The forensic personnel behind the black man, the front one was a blonde white man wearing black-framed glasses and a suit. He was very young, looked at Locke with an inquiring look, and didn't say anything. The detectives and forensic personnel of the Detective Bureau who followed closely also cast curious eyes on Locke. Obviously, Locke was already well known in the Detective Bureau. Soon, the people of the Detective Bureau filled the apartment, and Locke and his 4 companions could only stand outside to protect the scene. After a while, Tom Williams was heard giving orders in the room in an orderly manner. His voice was calm and concise, just like a computer command. "Dean, find the cleaner who reported the case. I want a detailed record." Jimmy, find the manager of the apartment. "I want to know all the information of the deceased, and send it to Emily as soon as possible." After getting the information of the deceased, to see if there is any information of the deceased in the database. Also, I want all the surveillance of the apartment building. Sophia, call Alvin and ask him to check all the surveillance near the apartment and find suspicious suspects. William, when can you tell me the time of death of the deceased? Chapter 83. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Soon, Inspector Dean and the Black Jimmy each walked out of the room with a detective, and went to complete their tasks vigorously. When the Black Jimmy passed by Locke, he snorted at him again, with a look of disdain on his face. Locke was speechless. Damn, this idiot forced him to become a racist. David smiled and asked Locke, how is it? Do you regret it? Mark and Teddy also looked at Locke. Everyone in the police station knew that he rejected Tom Williams. Locke shrugged and said indifferently, I'm already preparing for the detective exam. Teddy looked at Locke with envy. They were rookies in the same period, but Locke not only finished his internship earlier than him, but was even recruited by the FBI and the Detective Bureau respectively. This hit him, who was always arrogant. He secretly glanced at Mark next to him and remembered the conversation between him and the Ministry of Internal Affairs before. If he could complete that task, he should become the second rookie to finish his internship early. David asked Locke again, have you asked for leave tomorrow morning? Locke nodded and said, well, I have something to do tomorrow morning. Don't worry, it won't take long. I won't let you be alone for too long. That he made an appointment with Marion to take the Mendez brothers and sisters to her law firm to sign a contract tomorrow morning. David said unhappily, I wish I couldn't see you all day. I'm annoyed when I see you. Locke didn't want to pay attention to this arrogant old man and gave him a middle finger directly. This scene made Teddy's envious again. Why did other interns have a good relationship with the instructors, but he messed up? He couldn't help but start to reflect. Mark did have many behaviors that he couldn't agree with, but didn't he have his own problems here? Thinking of this, Teddy's decided to find an opportunity to ask Locke for advice. The future detective, come in. The voice of Tom Williams suddenly came from the room. When Locke heard this voice, he knew that Tom Williams wanted to ridicule him, but he just pretended not to hear it. Seeing David and the other two staring at him, he asked back, why are you looking at me? At this time, Sophia appeared at the door and looked at Locke with a gloating look on her face. Locke, Detective Tom wants to invite you in. Locke turned his head and asked David, can I refuse? David looked at Locke sympathetically and shook his head, sorry. Although the Wilshire Police Department is not affiliated with the Detective Bureau, even an ordinary detective has a higher rank than our patrol officer, not to mention that he is a captain. The Detective Bureau reports directly to the Chief of the Los Angeles Police Department at Parker Center, and its administrative level is the same as the Operations Department. The Robbery and Murder Division under the Detective Bureau is at the same level as the Western Division, so Tom Williams, a captain of the Robbery and Murder Division, is at the same level as Anna Davis, the head of the Wilshire Police Department. Locke could only give up and turn to walk towards the door. Damn it, the higher the rank, the lower the rank, there is nothing I can do. David patted his shoulder and comforted him, good luck, kid. Mark and Thaddeus also looked at Locke with sympathy. The entire Los Angeles Police Department knew that although Tom Williams, the detective of the Detective Bureau, was a god at solving cases, he had a strange personality and was difficult to deal with. Locke had offended him and would definitely be troubled later. Locke followed Sophia into the room. He then realized that Sophia, as a detective sergeant, was actually at the same level as Captain Jones, which further strengthened Locke's determination to join the Detective Bureau. Although the power is not great, the level goes up quickly. Sophia whispered to comfort him, don't worry, he dare not do too much. Locke was attracted by the environment of the room as soon as he entered the room, and his expression instantly became solemn. He just stood at the door and glanced at it before, and didn't see much. When he entered the room, he found that the room was unusually clean and tidy. All the furniture was spotless, and everything in the room was neatly arranged. There was no trace of anyone living in it at all. Locke's heart was hanging in the air, because everything in this room made him feel unusually familiar. This room was too much like his previous room. Sophia took Locke to the bedroom. The bedroom was the same as the living room. Everything was clean and tidy, including the bed. The sheets were very flat, and the quilts and pillows were folded like in a hotel. Outside the bed, on a chair by the window, a gray-haired man was lying, wearing dark pajamas, with his head resting on the chair, his face facing the sky, as if he was asleep. Mark was right, the body was very clean, not bloody at all, at least it looked decent from the front. The body was shot in the head. A bullet entered his forehead and went out from the back of his head, so there was a bullet hole in his forehead, and there was not even a trace of blood. However, the back was not as clean as the front. Behind the chair, a pool of red and white flowed from the back of the head, but it was not easy to see without turning around. At this moment, two people from the forensic department were squatting behind the chair to measure the diameter of the bullet hole in the back of the head. One of them was the blond white man with black-framed glasses who was seen at the door before. Tom Williams stood on the inside of the bed, far away from the body. He looked at Locke expressionlessly and asked, "Future detective, is there a camera in this room?" Locke has basically determined that the body on the chair is in the same industry as him and is also a scavenger. Or, he used to be a scavenger. He is a bit old and should have retired long ago. Looking at the dead old man, Locke couldn't help but feel a little empathy. Sure enough, scavengers are a road of no return. Even if you retire, don't think about having a good end. Without hearing Locke's answer, Tom Williams urged impatiently, "Hey, don't tell me that you are scared by this corpse. The last time you shot someone in the head with a SCAR rifle, the scene was much bloodier than this." Locke calmed down instantly, knowing that this was not the time to mourn for his fellow man. He glanced at Tom Williams and replied, "No camera was found." Tom Williams asked again, "What suggestions do you have for this case?" Locke was about to answer and leave, and the black-framed glasses who was recording the fingerprints of the corpse suddenly turned his head and said, "Captain, this deceased has no fingerprints." Tom Williams frowned and asked, "William, can't you get to the point?" William, the black-framed glasses, looked a little embarrassed and replied, "The fingerprints of all 10 fingers of the deceased were destroyed, and it was an old injury from adulthood. It should have been destroyed for a long time." Tom Williams laughed, "Interesting." He touched his chin and said to himself, "The deceased did not struggle or resist. Maybe he knew the killer." At this time, Sophia's cell phone rang. She answered the phone and said to Tom Williams, "Jimmy has found out the identity of the deceased. The deceased is named Ryan Hollis, 62 years old, a retired bus driver, but Emily has checked it. This information is all false." She also used the image of the deceased for comparison. "There is no information about the deceased in the database." Tom Williams turned his head to look at Locke, and asked jokingly, "How is it? Any suggestions?" Future Detective. Chapter 84. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Damn, calling him a psychopath is not wrong at all. Locke was getting more and more disgusted with Tom Williams. He said coldly, "Do I have to give you advice so that I can leave?" Tom Williams shrugged and said, "Okay." Locke smiled lightly and said coldly, "My advice is to advise you to hand over this case as soon as possible, otherwise it will affect your reputation as a detective." As soon as he finished speaking, the faces of the 4 people in the bedroom were not very good, and even Sophia looked at him with an unhappy expression. You can dislike Tom Williams's personality and character, but you can't question his ability to solve cases. This is the consensus of most people in LAPD. Locke's words clearly mean that Tom Williams can't solve this case. Tom Williams's face suddenly became very ugly. He stared at Locke for a while, and his expression slowly returned to calm. "Let's make a bet." Locke was naturally not afraid of him, and nodded. "Okay, what do you want to bet?" Tom Williams' mouth overflowed with a trace of evil smile. "I know you hate me, and I hate you too. So, if you lose, come to my team." Locke raised his eyebrows and said coldly, "If you lose, in the future, please keep enough respect for me in the future." He originally wanted to ask Tom Williams not to appear in front of him in the future, but thinking that he would have to go to the detective bureau in the future, this request was too difficult. Tom Williams clapped his hands and said excitedly, "It's getting more and more interesting. Can you tell me why you think I can't solve this case?" Locke frowned and said, "Captain Tom, you just agreed." Tom Williams was stunned and asked back, "Don't you want to surpass me?" Locke was about to say something to him, and footsteps came from outside. Dean Dyson and Black Jimmy, who had left before, came back, and their faces were not very good. Dean Dyson said, "I took a statement from the cleaner who found the body, but there was no useful information. He saw that the door was not closed, so he came in to check, found the body, and called the police immediately. He didn't see any suspicious people. I also asked the tenants upstairs and downstairs, and they all said they didn't hear anything unusual." Black Jimmy also said, Emily should have reported it. All the information of the deceased is false, including bank information and social security information. I also went to the management office to find out. They don't have any impression of the deceased. He rarely goes out. Also, the camera in the apartment has been broken for half a month, Tom Williams asked outside. Have you checked the door lock of the room? Did you find anything? Someone in the living room immediately replied, no signs of intrusion from the door lock have been found so far, but the final result will have to wait until we return to the police station for more precise testing. Tom Williams remained calm and smiled at Locke. I know this case may be done by a professional killer. There are indeed few witnesses and physical evidence, which is very difficult. Do you think I can't catch him? Locke asked again, can I leave? He sneered in his heart. He didn't live past 35 years old, but this scavenger could retire. Just think about it and you will know that he is not serving an illegal organization, but has a regular job. Tom Williams was a little impatient with Locke's repeated disrespect. He waved his hand and signaled that he could leave. Locke turned and left. The black man Jimmy stepped in front of him and said harshly, boy, please respect Captain Tom. Locke was already angry, and this black man provoked him again and again. He smiled coldly and ran straight towards the black man. Although Jimmy's physique is considered strong among black people, he can't stand Locke's current physique and collision skills. After being hit, he took several steps back until he hit the wall and stopped. After being stunned for a while, he became angry. Damn it, you, a small patrolman, dare to hit me. After knocking Jimmy back, Locke turned his head and looked at Tom Williams, seemingly unaware that the angry gorilla was rushing towards him. Locke, be careful. The novel was taken from the Rawlers website. Close where you're reading it and support us on our website for more free novels. Hey, man, calm down. Fuck. Discovering the conflict, David, Mark, and Thaddeus rushed in instantly and blocked between Locke and Jimmy, and the atmosphere instantly became tense. Jimmy. Tom Williams also stopped Jimmy with a voice, and Jimmy stopped instantly as if he heard an order. He stared coldly at Locke, who was staring at him with contempt, and glanced at David and the other three, officers, patrolmen, you can go out. Locke patted Mark and Thaddeus on the shoulders to show his gratitude. As for David, no need to say this. Locke looked at Jimmy with disdain, and said coldly, you should thank my colleagues. If they hadn't stopped you, you would be lying on the ground now. He just left his back to Jimmy on purpose, just to catch the opportunity to punish the black detective and give Tom Williams a warning, but he didn't expect David, Mark, and Teddy to rush in at once, which touched him and made him quite regretful. Jimmy looked unconvinced and said angrily, what are you bragging about? I just didn't stand firm. Then you can try again next time. Locke left this sentence and walked straight to the door to continue their duty of guarding the door. Damn, patrolmen have no human rights. Jimmy stared at Locke fiercely. Seeing that everyone else was looking at him, he felt ashamed and said to Tom Williams, Captain, this guy has a bad temper and is a thorn in the eye. I wonder what you like about him. Tom Williams ignored him and asked Sophia, I remember he seemed to play rugby before. Yes, after Sophia replied, she turned her head and said to Jimmy seriously, Jimmy, I have to remind you that he is not an ordinary patrolman. He played rugby for almost 10 years before joining LAPD. His physical fitness is not worse than yours. He just slaughtered 5 fully armed Army veterans last week, all of whom were killed in one shot. So, don't provoke him again, because what he said is true. If you had attacked him just now, you might be lying on the ground now. Jimmy's face changed for a while after being told by Sophia, and he felt more and more ashamed and annoyed. Dean Dyson also whispered, think about it, when you attacked him, he had his back to you. If you get hurt, the Detective Bureau can't ask you for justice. He did it on purpose, Jimmy said gloomily, this bastard is so sinister. Tom Williams smiled and said, now you know why I want to recruit him. I really like him. He is more sinister than you. So, cheer up, find the murderer, and let this kid become. Locke's voice suddenly came from the door, Captain Tom, there are 2 CIA officers looking for you. Locke stared at the two CIA agents in suits and sunglasses in front of him, and suddenly realized that the dead retired scavenger in the house was a CIA man. Chapter 85. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Tom Williams' smile froze. He turned to look at the door, then glanced at the corpse, and suddenly thought of something, and walked towards the door with a gloomy face, followed by the others. At the door, two CIA agents looked at Locke and the other three with cold expressions. After seeing Tom Williams, an older agent showed him his ID. "I am a senior special agent of the CIA, Agent Jamie Howard." Tom Williams frowned and stared at the CIA agent. He had already guessed the purpose of their coming here. Detective Bureau, Robbery and Murder Division, Tom Williams. Jamie Howard curled his lips and complimented. It turned out to be the famous LAPD detective Captain Tom. Captain Tom, the deceased is a retired CIA agent. This case, Tom Williams interrupted him coldly. I remember that the CIA has no law enforcement power in the United States. Jamie Howard's face twitched, and he replied calmly, "Thank you for your reminder, so this case will be taken over by the FBI, they are on the way," Tom Williams said with a sour face. "I need to make a call." Jamie Howard looked calm. "Please, but please ask your people to stop working immediately to avoid destroying the scene. In addition, please hand over the evidence you just collected to the FBI." Tom Williams made a call in front of everyone and hung up the phone soon. He turned his head and ordered behind him, "Everyone, go home. William, you stay and hand over to the FBI." After saying that, he glanced at Locke, who was looking straight at him. His face turned pale and he left without saying anything. Sophia, Dean Dyson, the black man Jimmy and a group of detectives behind him all looked very ugly. It was too embarrassing to have the case robbed halfway. In Los Angeles, even the FBI would not rob the case so directly. Usually, they would notify the upper level of the detective bureau first. So Dean Dyson and the black man Jimmy led the detectives of the detective bureau to leave one after another. Sophia walked a few steps and stopped again, turning her head to look at Locke. "Locke, I apologize to you on behalf of Captain Tom, but he really values you." Locke looked calm, and he was a little gloating over Tom Williams being slapped in the face by the CIA. "Detective Sophia, please remind Captain Tom that I won." Sophia was startled, and then she realized that Locke had won the bet that he had just made with Tom Williams. She frowned and asked, You knew we would hand over this case?" Locke shrugged and glanced at the CIA next to him. "I guessed, but fortunately, I guessed right. Otherwise, I would have to face Tom Williams's stinky face." Sophia smiled bitterly. It seemed that Locke really hated Tom Williams to the extreme, but Tom still wanted to pull him into the team. After Sophia left, Locke found two CIA agents looking at him. Although both of them were wearing sunglasses, he still felt their gazes. It should be that his conversation with Sophia attracted their attention. It must be said that these two CIA agents were too pretentious, even more pretentious than the FBI. Locke immediately thought of one thing. Since this case involves the CIA, it is not something they can get involved in. After all, the relationship between LAPD and the FBI and CIA is completely different from that of the Detective Bureau. They have no obligation to assist the CIA and FBI. He immediately asked, "Sir, since the FBI will take over this case, can we leave?" Jamie Howard turned his head and glanced at his colleague next to him. The CIA agent who had not spoken said, "Please wait a moment. When the FBI comes, you can sign a confidentiality agreement and leave." Locke frowned and said unhappily, "I need to ask my boss." In the United States, even law enforcement officers are unwilling to sign such things unless they have no choice. They are bound by constraints for nothing, and in terms of procedures, he has to report to Captain Jones. The CIA agent hesitated for a moment and replied, "Yes, but you can't disclose the case." Locke couldn't help it immediately. Damn it, the people from the Detective Bureau didn't sign any confidentiality agreement just now. Why do they ask so much from here? He asked, "Sir, if I don't report the case, how can my boss assess the risk of this matter?" Wait a moment. After the two CIA agents walked aside and exchanged a few words, Jamie Howard said, "You can report to your boss, but we need to know your boss's confidentiality level." Locke had no choice but to think about it and told Anna Davis's identity. After all, Richard Jones' rank was still a little lower. When Jamie Howard knew that Anna Davis was a police inspector, he immediately nodded in agreement. Locke immediately called Anna Davis. As soon as the call was connected, he immediately said, "Captain, there are some changes regarding the shooting case at the apartment building at 55, Biller Street. This case involves the CIA." He told Anna Davis what had just happened and the CIA's request. After listening, Anna Davis asked him to hand over the phone to the CIA. Locke handed the phone to Jamie Howard. "Sir, Captain Davis wants to talk to you." In a speeding Ford Explorer, the atmosphere was very depressing, mainly because Tom Williams in the co-pilot seat had a gloomy face, which made Dean Dyson and Jimmy in the back seat dare not say a word. After a while, Tom Williams asked, "What do you think of this case?" Dean Dyson saw that Sophia, who was driving, had no intention of speaking, so he replied, "Since the deceased is a retired CIA agent, many things are clear. The killer's method was neat and tidy, without leaving too many traces. It was obviously done by a professional killer. I suspect that there is a problem within the CIA." Tom Williams raised his eyebrows. "Do you suspect that the killer is also from the CIA?" Dean Dyson nodded and said, "The deceased was not tortured, and it is likely that he was simply silenced." Tom Williams crossed his hands and said without comment, "There is nothing wrong with this logic. Then go back and summarize how many criminal cases in the United States from last year to now have been taken over by the CIA or FBI before they even started, just like this case." Dean lost his voice and said, "You mean, I understand." Tom Williams turned to Sophia and asked, "Why did that kid know that the deceased was related to the CIA?" Sophia replied, "He didn't say the deceased was related to the CIA, he just suggested handing over the case." Tom Williams raised his eyebrows. "Is there any difference?" "Of course." Sophia also pondered for a moment and said, "He should have discovered something and realized that this case is not something we can handle, but we thought at the time that he thought we couldn't catch the murderer." But it's the same idea. The case was intercepted, and we still can't catch the murderer." Tom Williams asked, "What else did he say?" Sophia smiled gloatingly. "He asked me to remind you that you lose." "Fuck," Tom Williams cursed angrily, but soon calmed down, with a nervous smile on his lips. "I am now looking forward to his coming to the Detective Bureau more and more." Chapter 86. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At night, at Sky Bar, after finishing work, Locke invited David, Mark, and Teddy to come over for a drink, and Randy, Superintendent Mona, and Wayluan also came with them. In the CIA case during the day, after Anna Davis intervened, the CIA directly let the 4 people leave, and did not sign any confidentiality agreement. It was a typical bullying of the weak and fear of the strong. After experiencing this incident, Locke wanted to join the Detective Bureau more urgently. The position of patrolman was really too low. In fact, Locke was still very curious about the case during the day. Why would a retired CIA scavenger be silenced? The dead scavenger showed no signs of resistance and was not tortured. Locke suspected that he might know the murderer, or was directly silenced, because his death seemed very calm, and there was no fear or resentment before his death, and the killer must be a master among masters. Locke did not find any traces of the killer at the scene. Obviously, the killer cleared all his traces after killing. His identity was already obvious to Locke. This killer is not only a killer, but also a scavenger. This is the profession that Locke once yearned for the most, because such a comprehensive talent has always been an S-level top talent in the organization. Unfortunately, his killing skills have always been a weakness, and he can only serve as a scavenger in the end, which belongs to the B-level logistics talent. David left first after drinking a glass, saying that Catherine finally finished the identification of the body in the case of Irvin Marcus, and went home tonight, and he couldn't leave Catherine alone at home. After David left, Locke smiled at everyone. "Do you know what a father like David is called in China?" After a while, under the publicity of Randy, the big mouth, the fact that David is a daughter slave spread throughout the bar. Daughter slave, what a real image. Guys, for David. Cheers to the daughter slave. Many of Wilshire's colleagues also raised their glasses and shouted to drink a glass for David, the daughter slave. After the commotion, Mark finished the wine in his glass and said, "Sorry, guys, I have to go too." Seeing that everyone was staring at him, he spread his hands and couldn't help laughing and said, "Okay, I admit that I am also a daughter slave. I have to go home and tell Lena a bedtime story, otherwise she can't fall asleep." Amid the jokes of the crowd, Mark stood up and patted Locke on the shoulder to thank him for the beer tonight. He hesitated for a moment and patted Teddy again. "Man, you did a good job today." Until Mark left, Teddy's face was still full of disbelief, and he said incoherently, "This is the first time Mark has made such a close gesture to me and the first time he has praised me." Superintendent Mona showed a relieved expression. The entire Wilshire Police Department knew that the relationship between Mark and Teddy was tense. She asked curiously, "What did you do today?" Teddy looked at Locke and asked, "Can you tell me?" Locke thought for a moment and thought that it would be fine if he didn't tell the case. He shrugged and said, "Let me tell you." So he told Superintendent Mona and the others about the conflict he had with the Detective Bureau when handling the murder case at the apartment building at 55 Biller Street. Randy shouted directly, "Cool." He pounded his chest, "Bro, believe me, if I were there, I would stand behind you." Wei Luan also said with a serious face, "I would." Superintendent Mona nodded and said, "Good, Teddy, you did a good job on this matter. This shows that Mark has begun to agree with you." She said to Locke again, "I suggest you report this matter to Captain Jones, otherwise, next time." Locke smiled and said, "There should be no next time. I made a bet with Tom Williams today, and he lost. If he keeps his promise, this kind of thing should not happen again in the future." Wei Luan held a beer glass and smiled. "I am curious about what bet you made with Tom Williams. Can you tell me?" Locke hesitated for a moment, shook his head and said, "Sorry, I can only tell you that this case is related to the CIA and has been taken over by the FBI. I can't say anything else." Wei Luan understood immediately, and after looking at Superintendent Mona and Randy, he immediately said, "No problem, then this matter ends here." At this time, Thaddeus said to Locke with a serious face, "Locke, can I ask you some questions in private?" Locke looked at him in surprise, and seeing that he was serious, he nodded and said, "Okay, then we go first." He said to Superintendent Mona, Randy, and Wei Luan, "Guys, tell old John that tonight is mine." Randy screamed exaggeratedly, "Don't worry, I won't let you go bankrupt." Superintendent Mona he also laughed and said, "Great, I've wanted to try old John's 30-year-old Macallan for a long time." Locke gave a middle finger back and left with Teddy. Superintendent Mona watched the two leave and asked Randy, "Does Elsa have a conflict with Locke?" Elsa wanted to come just now, but Locke didn't invite her. Randy hesitated and said, "Elsa said they rolled the sheets during the training, but they didn't get together, just." Superintendent Mona shrugged, "I see. The Sky Bar is not far from the Wilshire Police Station and is close to MacArthur Park. Anyway, they can't drive." So Locke and Teddy walked along MacArthur Park. Along the way, Teddy told his troubles, saying that he found that Mark had a bad attitude towards black people when he was patrolling. He thinks Mark is a racist and prejudiced against black people. "He has always been cold to me. I don't know how to get along with him. He just patted my shoulder and praised me." This is really the first time, through his contact with Mark during this period. Locke does not think he is a black policeman, but Mark is indeed very strict when enforcing the law against black people. Locke pondered for a moment and said, "Well, I have actually suffered racial discrimination before." Teddy was stunned for a moment, then thought of Locke's mixed-race identity and asked, "Was it also by white people?" Locke shook his head, "No, black people. In the high school football team in the United States, black people are already the majority. It must be said that this race is really good at running." Teddy showed an unbelievable look, as if he couldn't imagine that black people would discriminate against other ethnic groups. Locke shrugged, hesitated for a moment, and said, Although it's a bit offensive, because of Chief Philip's achievements, in fact, to some extent, you have already left the black class. Do you really understand your ethnicity?" Thaddeus's father, Philip Martin, is the Minister of Internal Affairs of the Western Division. He is a senior member of the LAPD and a typical example of a black elite with a black skin and a white heart. Blacks at this level basically have nothing to do with the black community except for their skin color, and they may even cut themselves off from the black community. Of course, black politicians are an exception, because they still need to cheat the votes of the black community. Chapter 87. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Teddy rejected it, saying, "No, I have always been paying attention to my ethnic group. I know my ethnic group very well. I have not left my ethnic group." Locke thought he should have found the reason and decided to brainwash him. He continued, "I have always had a question. We all know that racial discrimination is wrong and opposing racial discrimination is politically correct. But it seems that no one has ever thought that opposing racial discrimination is actually unfair. You have stifled the freedom of others to express their own ideas. You do not allow others to dislike something. Is this correct? Let me give you an example. Some people do not like vegetarianism. Then, vegetarians say it is wrong. This is discrimination against vegetarianism. Isn't this more intuitive?" Teddy was stunned for a moment and stared at Locke in a daze. Obviously, he had not thought about what Locke said. In the United States, opposing discrimination has been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. This is politically correct. However, Locke's words seemed to have no problem with logic, but they were too shocking and simply overturned his three views. Locke asked back, "Do you think I'm a racist?" Teddy shook his head, so Locke told him about the last time a black female firefighter complained about his racism. Teddy said in disbelief, "This is crazy, how could this happen?" Locke spread his hands, looking helpless. Not to mention, MacArthur Park was quiet at night, and it was even darker inside, which looked a bit gloomy. "Fortunately, the lights outside were brighter," he said seriously. "I think people of different skin colors are equal, but you have always put yourself in a disadvantaged position, using the pain you have experienced in the past, hoping to get special care or privileges." Locke shrugged, looked directly at Teddy, and asked, "Don't you think this behavior itself is a kind of discrimination against your own group?" He sighed, "These behaviors are unfair to other ethnic groups. When you appeal for your rights, you are trampling on fairness. Teddy, it is obvious that you don't know enough about your ethnic group. I suggest you talk to Ma. Let's talk to Locke once." Everything has a reason. Teddy looked a little heavy, his mind was a little confused, he thought seriously for a while, and nodded solemnly, "I will, thank you, Locke, for telling me these things, your words inspired me a lot." Locke shrugged, "I am also a person of color." Teddy showed a speechless look, "Although I am very happy that you admit that you are a person of color, but I have to remind you, Locke, you are very white." Locke looked embarrassed, and was about to explain, when he suddenly heard a woman's call coming from the park, "Help, help, stop, stop, please, please let me go." Locke and Teddy's faces suddenly changed, stopped talking, and rushed into the park as soon as possible. Locke immediately pulled out his G19 from his back. In fact, the gun was placed in the storage box, and there was only an empty holster on his waist. He reached behind his waist and the G19 appeared in his hand. He knew that Thaddeus didn't have a gun, so he handed him his phone and said to him, "Use my phone to call the police, and use your phone to record the video." I understand. Thaddeus reacted instantly, dialing 911 with Locke's phone while turning on the video function of his own phone. Following the sound of the call, Locke quickly found the crime scene, only to see a black man lying on the ground committing a crime, with two white legs struggling desperately. "Fuck, it's too late. It's already in, damn it." Locke shouted loudly, "LAPD, get up, raise your hands." The woman heard that the police were coming, and she struggled even harder, "Help, help," but the black criminal seemed to have not heard Locke's warning, and still kept his head down, like a gorilla in heat. Bang. Locke shot at the place 5 meters away from Black. He wanted to shoot directly, but the two were stacked together, and he was afraid of accidentally injuring the victim. He shouted again, "Please stop your criminal behavior immediately, or the next shot will hit you." The black criminal was frightened and had to stop. He climbed up from the woman reluctantly, cursing, "Fuck, I'm not done yet." As soon as he got up, the woman on the ground instantly retreated and curled up into a ball, pulling the hem of her skirt to wrap herself up, crying miserably. This is a very petite young white woman with blonde hair and skin as white as snow, but it's a pity that she has just been defiled. The black criminal looks he was 1.9 meters tall, dressed like a homeless man, smelling foul, and very strong. He looked young. The black criminal raised his hands indifferently, leaving his crude stuff exposed, as if to provoke Locke and the others. Locke's eyes were cold, and he pointed the Glock G19 at the criminal and said in a deep voice, "Now lie on the ground, I want to search you." The black criminal's face changed and he cursed, "Fuck, how can I lie down like this? I want to complain to you." Locke ignored him and said again, "Please lie on the ground. Don't make any other movements, I want to search you." The black criminal heard the threat in Locke's words, knelt on the ground familiarly, and then slowly lay down, with his buttocks raised. Locke hurriedly shouted to the livid Thaddeus next to him, "Thaddeus, go over and search me." He also moved towards the victim, but the gun was pointed at the criminal lying on the ground from beginning to end. "Madam, are you injured? Do you need me to call an ambulance for you?" The white woman cried, "Yes, please call an ambulance, I'm in pain down there." Thaddeus hurriedly told the police phone that had not been hung up to call an ambulance, then returned the phone to Locke, and while recording the video, he searched the black criminal on the ground with his other hand, and shook his head to Locke, "No weapons." Locke breathed a sigh of relief and said, "Lock him up and wait for support." Thaddeus put the criminal's hands behind his back, then knelt on them and pressed them down, cursing, "You beast are just a scumbag, have you not evolved yet?" The black criminal immediately sprayed, "Fuck, I will sue you for racial discrimination." Thaddeus was really angry this time, and he put more force on his feet, angrily cursing, "You idiot, don't you find that I have the same skin color as you?" The black criminal shouted, "Fuck, you hurt me, if my brother is broken, I will sue you. Help, I can't breathe." Thaddeus was so angry that he even forgot that he was recording a video, and cursed directly, "Fuck, I didn't kneel on your neck, so you fucking breathe with your lower body." Locke's scalp was numb when he heard it on the side. Fortunately, these words were said by Thaddeus, who was also black. If he said it, he would inevitably be suspended for investigation. At this time, the sound of the police car was finally heard, and soon patrolmen with flashlights came over. Locke shouted immediately, "Don't shoot, the criminal has been controlled, my police number is 9988, Locke." "Yes, Teddy is here too. Wilshire Police Station is the closest to here, so the police who came here are all Wilshire." Locke and Teddy quickly handed the scene over to their colleagues for support. Soon the victimized white woman was also taken away by ambulance, and the black criminal was handcuffed. His thing had become like a slug, and no one was willing to help him put it in. Locke and Teddy told their colleagues about what happened and left. Teddy left his mobile phone as evidence, and the two of them would have to make up a statement tomorrow morning. Teddy was frustrated, staring at the criminal who was escorted into the patrol car, and said frustratedly, "Locke, you are right, it seems that I really don't understand my ethnicity." Chapter 88. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the morning, Locke went to the law firm with Marion in her car. After separating from Teddy last night, he called an Uber back to Beverly Hills. He didn't take the rape case last night too seriously and was not in a hurry to go back to the police station to record his statement. That case had all the evidence and witnesses, and it would be handed over to the procuratorate for prosecution immediately. However, Teddy might be punished because what he said last night was too much. Even if he was black, he would be investigated, but when I think about who his father is, this kind of punishment is useless. The second generation of officials is so cool. At a traffic light intersection, Marion hesitated and said, "Locke, Anna didn't let me tell you in advance, but I think it shouldn't matter. You will be awarded a medal next week. She invited me and your father to go to the ceremony. Your father will fly back then." Lee both flew back to New York early on Monday morning. After the IPO in New York is over, he will return to Los Angeles to work. The family crisis has been completely resolved. Locke was a little hesitant. Under normal circumstances, it was normal for the LAPD to award medals and for the family to come to the ceremony and witness the glorious moment. However, he was reluctant to expose Marion and Lee Bo to the LAPD. He knew very well that the dangers of this world were beyond the imagination of ordinary people. If Lee Bo and Marion attended his medal awarding ceremony, they would be exposed to too many people. Marion did not hear Locke's answer. She turned her head and looked at him, and asked in confusion, what's wrong? You don't want me and your father to go to the ceremony? Locke made a decision soon and told him about the last time he killed 2 drug dealers, which triggered the revenge of the Medina organization and put his family in danger. He apologized, "Sorry, Marion, although the Medina organization has been destroyed, this risk will still exist in the future, so I don't want you and Dad to be exposed too much in the police station." Marion was silent for a moment after hearing this, and said, "Anna has told me about this matter, and she has arranged police officers to protect us near our home." She smiled and said, "Locke, as you said, we are a family, and I am very happy that you can take photos for us. However, as a family, we also want to witness your glorious moment, so your father and I will still attend your award ceremony." Locke couldn't help but smile bitterly. He knew that he was overreacting a little, but family was really his bottom line. He sighed and smiled, "I respect your decision and welcome you to attend my award ceremony." Half an hour later, Marion arrived at the law firm. Ham Law Firm is only a medium-sized firm in Los Angeles, mainly responsible for commercial contract disputes and patent disputes. The entire law firm, plus the trainee lawyers who account for 30%, has a total number of less than 100 lawyers, which is far less than the large law firms like Jeff Markey Law Firm with hundreds of lawyers. There are 5 partners like Marion in Ham Law Firm. Each partner's office is specially decorated, covering an area of more than 50 square meters, with a separate bathroom and lounge. Locke has been to Marion's office several times. As soon as he entered the office, he stood in the middle and walked around. In the car before, Marion asked him to help check if there were any cameras in the office. Marion asked nervously, "How is it?" Locke nodded and smiled, "Very clean." Marion was relieved and let Locke sit anywhere, and called the assistant to bring in coffee through the internal line. She picked up a stack of documents on the desk, walked to Locke, and asked, "Do you know how much the land of Mendez Repair Shop is worth?" Locke shook his head and asked, "Has it increased a lot?" Marion nodded and said, "The investigator asked a professional to evaluate it. The land is now worth about $60 million US. Wow! Although Locke knew that this piece of land should be valuable, he didn't expect it to be so valuable. Cavill Construction Company only wanted to buy this land for $20 million. No wonder there were so many tricks. Capitalists really dare to do anything that hurts the world for 300% profit. The Mendez brothers and sisters really lived a hard life guarding the treasure. I didn't expect Sarah to be a rich woman. However, even if they knew that the land was so valuable, they probably wouldn't sell it. Marion looked at Locke carefully. The investigator had investigated the situation of Mendez Repair Shop and even Mendez brothers and sisters. She had seen photos of Sarah Mendez and knew that this little girl was very beautiful. She frowned and asked, "What is your relationship with the Mendez siblings? Why are you helping them so much? You even asked your uncle to investigate the Cavill Construction Company. That Uncle Glenn actually told you everything." Locke couldn't help but complain that his involvement would cause the Mendez brothers and sisters to the Des brothers and sisters lost the protection of the drug lord. After hearing this, Marion frowned even more, and she stared at Locke coldly. "Then after this matter is over, you should have less contact with them. Their interpersonal relationships are too complicated, and they are actually related to drug lords." Locke wanted to explain, and just as he was about to speak, Marion's assistant knocked on the door and brought in coffee. The assistant was a yellow-skinned Asian, wearing a Gucci OL uniform, with a slim figure, an oval face, dyed yellow hair, single eyelids, and phoenix eyes, and she looked great. Marion introduced, "This is Vivian, my assistant, from South Korea." Locke hurriedly stood up and stretched out his hand. "Locke Lee, it's nice to meet you, thank you for helping Marion." After shaking hands with Locke, Vivian walked out of the office with red ears. Marion immediately warned, "Don't hit on her." Locke said dissatisfiedly, "Marion, what are you talking about? This Vivian has strange facial features, but it is very in line with American aesthetics." Marion snorted coldly, "Don't think I don't know about you and Jessica. She told me everything when she left." Jessica was Marion's last assistant. She was a sexy, hot, beautiful, and passionate Mexican beauty. After finishing her internship, she returned to Mexico. Locke could only take the blame and said with an embarrassed look, "This kind of thing will not happen again. I promise that Vivian is not my taste at all." Marion didn't stare at it, and said, "Remember to make an appointment with Jennifer later. I want to treat her to dinner." Sophia said that she has made an appointment with Professor Harold Caldwell and wants to thank her for her help this time. Locke was stunned. It seems that it is time to confess. Jennifer Grey is a very simple and independent woman. They are just friends with benefits. If she is asked to meet her parents, the nature will change. He exhaled and said seriously, "Marion, Marion, Mr. Mendez and Miss Mendez are here." Vivian pushed open the door, and Victor Mendez and Sarah Mendez appeared at the door with a slightly restrained look. Seeing Locke there, they immediately relaxed a little. The two were dressed very formally. Victor wore a gray casual suit, which made him look much more stable. Sarah wore a striped shirt and a 5.1-step skirt, which added a bit of maturity and dignity. Locke hurriedly stood up to greet them, led Victor and Sarah to the sofa, and introduced to Marion, who also stood up. "Mom, this is Victor Mendez and Sarah Mendez." He introduced them to the two. "This is Marion Locke, one of the partners of Ham Law Firm, and also my mother." Victor and Sarah were very surprised to hear that Marion was Locke's mother, and their expressions became restrained again. Marion smiled and shook hands with the two men, motioned for them to sit down, and told Vivian, "Tell Ralph to come over, and bring in 2 more cups of coffee." Marion handed a document to Victor. "Mr. Mendez, we have investigated clearly. Before helping you sign the parking contract, your lawyer Louis Lehman bought a house at a 30% discount. The house is worth $1.2 million, and the owner is the wife of Henry Cavill, the owner of Cavill Construction Company." Chapter 89. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Victor looked through the information and cursed immediately. This bastard, Edmund trusted him so much when he was alive, but he actually lied to us like this. Sarah also leaned over to look at the information in Victor's hand. Her expression became very gloomy. "I didn't expect it was really Uncle Louis." Although the brothers and sisters had long suspected Louis Carmen, they always had a little fantasy in their hearts. After all, Louis Carmen was Edmund's good friend when he was alive, and now the evidence is conclusive. Victor scolded, "You still call him uncle?" He sighed angrily and asked Marion, "Ms. Marion, we are friends with Locke, you are Locke's mother, we trust you very much, just take out the contract and let us sign it." Marion was stunned. She had been a lawyer for 20 years, and this was the first time she met such a client who signed a contract without asking anything. She couldn't help but glance at Locke and somewhat understood why Locke was willing to help them. She smiled and said, "Thank you very much for your trust in me, but this is not in line with our normal process." At this time, there was a knock on the door. Vivian pushed open the door, and a shrewd and capable middle-aged man walked in. Marion introduced, "This is Lawyer Anthony Ferdinand. He will be in charge of your case, but please rest assured that I will follow the whole process." The Mendez siblings looked at each other and realized that their case was not handled by Marion. Anthony Ferdinand is a very professional commercial contract lawyer. He explained his strategy to the Mendez siblings very professionally. He will complain to the Bar Association and apply to cancel the lawyer Luis Ramon's lawyer qualification. With substantial evidence, Luis Ramon will definitely be disqualified. Then he will sue Luis Ramon for violating professional ethics and damaging the interests of his employer, and claim compensation from him. At the same time, he will also sue the court for fraud in the parking lot lease contract and ask the other party to compensate for the loss. Sarah Mendez asked with concern, "What is the probability of winning?" Anthony Ferdinand smiled confidently, "Although there is nothing wrong with this contract, the Smith company that signed the contract with you filed for bankruptcy less than 3 months after signing the contract, and then resold the contract to Cavill Construction Company and bribed your lawyer. This series of actions, as long as the judge is not a fool, will most likely be judged as fraud. We have at least an 80% chance of winning." Victor Mendez is more concerned about another question, how much is the attorney fee? Marianne raised her hand to signal Anthony Ferdinand to answer this question for her. "Commercial contract for the same dispute, our attorney fee is usually 30% of the compensation amount, but you are Locke's friend, so this time we will only charge 25%. Victor Mendez was stunned for a moment, and asked in disbelief, "So we don't need to pay attorney fees?" Marianne nodded, and Victor asked again, "How much do you plan to claim?" Anthony Ferdinand took over the conversation and said, "Based on the current land price of Mendez Repair Shop, we plan to claim $3 million, but in the end it should not reach this amount." Victor was directly frightened, turned his head to look at his sister, and then looked at Locke. "Is this okay?" Locke was also a little shocked in his heart. The lawyer is too black, too profitable. However, if Marion did not have such earning ability, his family would not be able to buy a house in Beverly Hills. He shrugged and replied, "Professional matters should be left to professionals." Victor sighed and nodded, "I have no problem, I can sign the contract." Half an hour later, Locke and the Mendez brothers and sisters left the Ham law firm together. As soon as he entered the elevator, Victor took off his suit jacket and sighed, "It's finally over." Sarah Victor also felt much more relaxed in an instant. She looked at Locke with gratitude and said solemnly, "Thank you, Locke." Locke smiled and said, "We are friends, aren't we? Besides, as the Chinese say, this is called keeping the wealth within the family." Victor took the initiative to pat Locke on the shoulder and said seriously, "This is different. We can't trust other lawyers anymore." After leaving the building, Locke saw Victor's Chevrolet Silverado and asked, "Can you give me a ride? I'm not driving." Victor gave Locke a middle finger and blamed him for being too polite. "Of course, tell me an address." After getting in the car, Locke reported the address of the Wilshire police station at 4861, Venice Avenue, turned his head and smiled at Sarah in the back seat. "Sarah, you look beautiful today." Sarah Mendez smiled shyly, "Thank you." Victor glared at Locke in dissatisfaction, "Hey, that's too much. In front of me, pick up my sister." Then he laughed again, "She spent half an hour choosing this dress this morning." "Pa!" Sarah Mendez slapped Victor's seat heavily and shouted in shame, "Victor, shut up and drive your car properly." Locke also subconsciously shrank his head and turned his head to look back. The brother and sister are really the same. Sarah Mendez has realized that she has lost her composure. Her pretty face is full of shame and she dare not look at him. Locke didn't want to embarrass her, so he quickly retracted his gaze and took the initiative to change the subject, saying, "Once the law firm takes action, Cavill Construction Company will soon know, and they will most likely take risks, so you must pay attention to safety in the next few days." Victor said confidently, "We have been practicing shooting every day these days, just waiting for them to come." Locke hesitated for a moment. In fact, he was a little unsure about the three people. A real gunfight is completely different from practicing guns. Thinking of sending Buddha to the west, he asked, "Can you keep an eye on the Smith family? If they intend to move, you can call me." In fact, the most reliable thing is of course for him to keep an eye on them, but he doesn't have the time or the mind to do so. After all, the relationship has not reached that point yet. Victor refused. "Locke, you have helped us enough," Locke said seriously. "If there is a real gunfight, the enemy will not stand still and wait for you to shoot. Bullets have no eyes. What if Sarah or Reed has an accident? What should we do? Moreover, I have another idea. Don't you want to take this opportunity to wipe out the Smith family in one fell swoop to prevent future troubles? I am a cop. Even if the lawsuit is won, the tract land is taken back, and compensation is received, Cavill Construction Company will definitely not be willing to accept it. So it is best to destroy the gang organization that colluded with him, so as to eliminate future troubles. I don't know if Uncle Glenn has made any progress. If necessary, it is not impossible to let Cavill of Cavill Construction Company to log in and cause an accident. Victor has seen Locke's shooting skills and knows that if Locke is there, it will be absolutely foolproof. He also wants to completely get rid of the days of being harassed by the gang, so he nodded and said, "Thank you, I will call you then." Locke asked, "Is the person who is following you reliable?" Victor hesitated for a moment, and finally said, "Ryder has a brother who has followed Martin recently. If Martin has any big moves, he will notify us as soon as possible." Locke was stunned. Wow, he really underestimated people. Victor actually knew how to plant spies. Chapter 90. You are listening at novelfull.audio. As soon as Locke returned to the police station, Richard Jones called him into his office. Captain Jones first praised Locke for his heroic behavior last night, and then asked, "Did you touch the suspect Miller last night?" Locke shook his head and said, "No." Captain Jones asked again, "Where is Thaddeus?" Locke's heart skipped a beat and replied, "He did, but he was searched." "What's wrong?" Captain Jones said gloomily, "This guy is an HIV carrier, this bastard." Locke remembered that this beast had penetrated the female victim without a condom last night. This woman was so unlucky. Not only was she raped, but she might also be infected with HIV. Then he thought of the physical contact between Ted's and the beast, and asked hurriedly, "How is Ted's?" Captain Jones said in a deep voice, "We just found the medical records of this bastard this morning. Ted's has gone to the hospital to get a blocking injection. He said that you didn't have any contact with the suspect, so I didn't call you." Locke recalled that Ted's only rubbed the black man a few times last night, which shouldn't be a big problem. He said angrily, "Fuck, I should have shot this bastard." Captain Jones's face sank. "Shut up, don't say such things in front of me. In the future, when you meet such homeless people, you must be more cautious and wear gloves when you have physical contact." After leaving Captain Jones' office, Locke was taken over by the detective team to record the record, which was finished in less than half an hour. When he came out, he happened to meet Ted's, who came back from the hospital, and there were 2 other police officers who had physical contact with the Black Miller last night. According to LAPD regulations, police officers must get blocking injections as long as they have contact with HIV carriers. If there is further risk of contact, they will be suspended and leave directly to wait for the results of the hospital test. Fortunately, no one helped that bastard stuff his bird last night. Seeing that Thaddeus looked lonely, Locke comforted him, "Don't worry, nothing will happen." Thaddeus shrugged, "I'm fine, but I found that my previous understanding of the black community was wrong." He showed a confused look. "I found that I hate black people a little. They have obviously experienced hardships and been enslaved. Why don't they work hard to change their ethnicity? Instead, they are so degenerate and willing to be garbage." Locke looked at Thaddeus in disbelief. Was his brainwashing last night so powerful? He actually turned a black person into a racist who discriminates against black people. Teddy said again, "I was notified of suspension this morning." Locke immediately thought about why, because of what I said last night. Teddy's nodded and said indifferently, "Well, my father called and scolded me, and asked why I had to take a video when I said those words." Locke was embarrassed and apologized, "Sorry, my fault." Teddy's turned around and comforted him, "It's none of your business. You also want to lock in the evidence of the crime. It's my problem. I didn't control my emotions." He sighed in frustration. "We were just in the hospital and saw the victim crying last night." Locke sympathized with the victim's experience. Perhaps if they had arrived earlier, they might not have intervened. He patted Teddy's on the shoulder and comforted him, "It's just once. I heard that the probability is very low." Low probability does not mean there is no risk," Teddy said expressionlessly. "During the time waiting for the report, she will have to suffer in the judgment of fate, which is too unfair to her. If she hadn't met that beast, she wouldn't have to endure all this." Locke was stunned for a moment, always feeling that something was wrong. He just glanced at the female victim last night. She was crying and crying. He vaguely remembered that she was a white woman with blonde hair and blue eyes and a petite figure. Could it be that Thaddeus was attracted to the female victim? Or did he want to atone for his black compatriots? Locke didn't stay in the Wilshire police station for long. David came back to pick him up soon. Seeing Locke sitting in the driver's seat, David twisted his body in the passenger seat and complained, "I don't know if it's because I haven't driven for too long. I've only been driving for a morning and my back and waist are sore." What's wrong with you? Why don't you look good?" Locke drove the patrol car out of the police station and said, "After Teddy and I left Old John's bar last night, we caught a rapist." David drank the iced American coffee he just bought, looking very enjoyable, and replied, "I knew about this when I came to the police station this morning." "Well done. I also heard that the suspect was caught and brought back to the police station with his cock exposed." Locke turned his head and glanced at him. "Then do you know that the suspect is an HIV carrier?" "Fuck." David subconsciously dodged to the side and asked, "Are you okay?" Locke gave him a middle finger and said unhappily, I didn't touch the suspect from beginning to end. David breathed a sigh of relief, sat up straight, and asked in confusion, why do you look like you're infected with HIV? Locke told David about the changes in Thaddeus's thoughts and his guesses, and asked worriedly, if Chief Philip knew, would he make trouble for me? After hearing this, David was silent for a few seconds, and said speechlessly, I think you don't want to be a policeman anymore. You're so good at talking, so you might as well be a politician. You have great potential in this area. ZZ, 18, Sunset Avenue, someone called the police and said that the neighbor was killed. 7 Adam 15, copy. Locke took a look at the map, immediately turned to Sunset Avenue, and asked casually, how was your morning? David replied with one word, busy. Locke curled his lips. He was indeed an experienced patrolman for more than 20 years. His words were so steady as an old dog, and he didn't even make a mistake. Soon, Locke and his team arrived at 18, Sunset Avenue. A terrified white woman stood on the side of the road. When she saw Locke's police car, she immediately rushed up and shouted, Mr. Thomas was killed. Code 6A. Locke left the code for the exit inspection and got out of the car with David. They didn't go into the room immediately. David asked the white woman, ma'am, what's your name? The white woman replied, Caroline Brown. David asked as he walked, Miss Caroline, please tell me how you found out that Mr. Thomas was killed. According to Ms. Caroline, she baked delicious pastries at home in the morning, and called Thomas, who lived alone at home, to come over and taste them together. However, no matter how she called Mr. Thomas, there was no response. She was worried that Mr. Thomas had an accident, so she went into the room to check, and finally found Mr. Thomas in the bedroom. Mr. Thomas was tied to a rattan chair in the bedroom, covered in blood, and was dead, so she immediately ran home to call the police. Locke and David were about to enter the door when they found that another police car had arrived for support. It was Inspector Mona and Wayluin. Inspector Mona came over and asked, how is it? David replied, we just understood the situation and were about to go in to check. Under the leadership of Ms. Caroline, the four went straight to the bedroom on the second floor. They smelled a strong fishy smell before they got close. Locke and the others did not go in. They all looked inside from the door. Since he was already dead, there was no need to go in, so as not to interfere with the evidence collection of the forensic department. On a rattan chair near the window of the bedroom, a middle-aged man was tied to the rattan chair with his head hanging down. There were many wounds and bloodstains on his body. There was a large pool of blood under the rattan chair. There was also a stinky smell of feces and urine in the air. The deceased had incontinence. Superintendent Mona looked serious. Just notify the detective bureau. Locke hesitated for a moment and said, maybe, there is no need to notify. This scene looks a little familiar.